Hello, everyone. John here. I'm going to do part two of how to build a subdivision on raw land. I know part one was pretty interesting, and I got to refine my thoughts and learn a lot as I went through it. So in this video, I wanted to take a step back and really review the overall process to home building and building subdivisions. And then in the next video, I'll do a follow-up of the current project update and where we are in the process. So once again, who am I? I'm John Delia. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a second generation, developer. I'd like to call myself an entrepreneur. And then I'm also a fun guy who's a construction cowboy. So I've, apprenticed and got dirty on job sites as well as played the suit role. And I also have a background in city planning. So I guess education is helpful as well. So what are your pre-qualifications? So, I mentioned education, but really, this is something you learn by doing. And I think the more hands-on you are, the better. You're going to need credit. So you're probably going to need to take out loans. So obviously, it's not something, if you are not prepared, you should not pursue, because, there are a lot of hard and soft costs involved. There's a lot of money and expenses that are going to rack up as you go through this process. So, be prepared for that. And next, you need a willingness, because there's a lot of problem solving along the way. And you're going to need confidence finally, because you're always going to be learning and you're always going to be having to overcome obstacles and hurdles. So let's talk about identifying your winning team. There's going to be a lot of stakeholders and team members you're going to need to help you become a success and to help you get this project completed. So we'll just run through some of these titles, like the surveyor, who's going to help you understand the boundaries of your land. And, they're going to help you retrace your boundaries and know your lot lines, et cetera. You're going to need a civil engineer who's going to help you with the connections to the, to the city infrastructure, the stormwater, the drains, the sewers, things like that. The civil engineer is going to help you do that. You're going to most likely need structural engineers who are going to make sure the engineering of these buildings are sound and, going to last, as well as architects who are going to help you have building plans, floor plans, designs, elevations, et cetera. You're most likely going to need a soil and environmental company to test your soil, understand your soils, and we'll get more into that soon. You're going to need land clearing companies like me. This subdivision is wooded. So to remove trees, to clear trees, to grade the site, you're going to need those kind of people. If you're not going to be the contractor, or let's say, if you're not going to be the contractor yourself, the lead on the project, then you're probably going to want to hire the contractor who's going to coordinate all these people and all these subs on your behalf. If you're going to sell this property in the future, you'll most likely need a realtor who's going to help you not only with comps, but probably marketing that property. And then you're also probably going to need a banker, because unless you're paying cash, you're going to need help financing a project such as this. So who are we missing? And as I was making this video, I realized, oh my gosh, John, what if they actually want to do it themselves? They're like you went to YouTube, you watched a bunch of videos. Then I realized, oh my gosh, if I want to do it myself, who else do I need? So if I don't hire the contractor, I'm going to give you a bonus. You're going to need to know an electrician. You're going to need to know plumbers. You're going to need to know an HVAC company. You're going to need to know tile and flooring companies. You're going to need to know the drywall people. You're going to need to know the painters. You're going to need to know the carpenters. You're going to need to know the windows company. You're going to need to know the foundation company who's going to build your house foundation. You're going to need to know equipment rentals. You're going to need to know roofers, framers. And even after I've said all these, they're probably missing more people. So just know you're going to have a wide network, and you're going to have to always be building and searching if you're going to be really successful in this. So let's talk about site selection. Like anything, I think the internet is wonderful. So there's, the MLS where you can just search on Zillow, on Realtor, on any of those sites, and you can get active listings. Here's another website one of my buddies recently told me about, LandWatch. And, you can look on sites like this. And then I still also troll Craigslist in my local market, because I find there's a lot of great direct sellers on that platform. So, I've put in some FAQs along the way to really help clarify some more. So one question is how to choose the best location for your ground up development or subdivision. Roads, sidewalks, what makes an area attractive? So for me, I really like to drive around, and ideally, I like to drive around and think, where could I find land that's at an affordable price? Where could I find land in an area that I know is going to be a home run and I know is going to sell? So really at this point, I'm looking for kind of middle class, upwardly mobile neighborhoods where I think school districts are solid, where I think, the community is overall improving, where you see infrastructure in the city really taking care of the area. That's really influencing me on where I want to find site selection. And another good influence is basically I like the strategy of secondary, and we call them tertiary markets, meaning if I can be just outside of a major city or just 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour away, I think that's a great opportunity where there's regional growth for cities and you can kind of push your development a little further out. And the reason I'm also saying that is because this process can take years. So as that population continues to grow and spread, hopefully it catches up to your development. So let's talk about the difference between large lots, large acreage, and infill lots. And really, I've discovered through this process that because this can take years of building a subdivision off raw acres, that's a more long-term project, and infill lots can be done way quicker. So really, I want to allude to long-term money versus short-term money. Infill can be quick. It can be done, let's say, in 6 to 8 months, depending on who you are and your experience. And, you could either sell that house on the market or you could refinance, and, it can be done fairly quickly. Like I said, subdivisions can take years. So whatever your profit is, you want to divide that by the time it took you to get the project done, whether it's an infill or whether it's a large scale acreage site. And that's really when you'll learn, your profit margins and if you're making money or if you're not. And for some people like me, it's a lot of fun on the way. So it's not just about the money, but you want to keep that in perspective because obviously you want to be in the green. So let's dig deeper into further what I look for. So I'm selling a product, and my product is the house. So I said here, the product happens to be the building. Land has varying zoning. So I need to consider, what can I build on that land? And then is it going to be worth my time to rezone? Because it's going to take time, energy, and fees, which is ultimately money. What's going to make the most money while fulfilling my goal? And sometimes my goal is to deliver a certain type of product. Sometimes my goal is to maximize the site. But really, ultimately, it's about how do I make money, So it's like, am I going to sell it? Am I going to rent it? Am I going to get equity at the end? What am I willing to suffer for in order to get the reward at the end of this process? Because obviously it's going to be challenging and there's a lot of work involved. So also when it comes to land, it's important to understand your soils. In the last video, I got questions about soil testing. Is that important? And I think it definitely is important, and it's a part in the process. One thing I learned along the way is that in most cities and counties, you can get what's known as these agricultural surveys. So basically, these are reports that are fully documenting kind of what's in your land and what the soils are like. So here's actually a shot of a site that we actually have now. And yeah, this report just tells you about the soils, what the clays are made up of, and that's ultimately going to dictate what and how you can build on that site and what type of foundations. So initially, I think before you go and hire, let's say, the professionals to do testing, boro testing, and drilling into your soil, I think that there's some near-term resources to save you some of the resources prior to deferring, not even saving. You're just kicking the can, but it helps inform your decision-making in the diligence process. So is your land flat? And really, in these reports, you're also going to learn about your contour lines and basically the varying elevations of your site. So is it flat? Is it hilly? From what point does it drop to another point, or does it raise? And then once again, how is that going to affect what you can build, how you can build, and the site grading? So another FAQ we got was how to get feasibility municipal approval for building a subdivision. And really, every city is going to have a fairly organized process for understanding building, zoning, etc. So it's all about understanding the building code. For a local city that I'm in for the project in Springfield, we can simply pull up the building code, and for your particular zoning of your site, it's going to give you the rules, the regulations, and what you have to do in order, and the requirements you have to meet in order to successfully move that project forward. So when you're looking at a listing, let's say when you go back to Realtor, Zillow, et cetera, a lot of the times I like to look at what are the lot dimensions and then what is the zoning code, so I can look that up and see how I can leverage that site. So once again, the lot lines and the dimensions are going to help me with site planning. Depending on if it's an infill lot or if it's a large scale site, I want to know what can I plan and what can I build on that site. And sometimes if you want to change the zoning, there's a process called the variance process. So what does it mean to apply for a land use variance? The process, how to prepare, in our experience. So essentially with one of my sites, I have the zoning necessary to build a subdivision of 22 homes. However, because it's a single acre, I now have to go through the process of subdividing the parcels, etc. But if I was going to change the use from, let's say, residential to commercial, etc., and the current use didn't permit that, I would have to go through once again, the paperwork and the requirements in order to fulfill that. Now, that process can vary depending on your city and municipality. And depending on what your project is, it might have to go up for a public commission or a public vote. And those typically happen monthly. And if there are changes that occur, you're going to have to kick the can 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, etc. So all of this is kind of coordinated on a timely schedule, and what happens at each event or milestone can influence your speed or your progress. Is a land use variant required for all subdivisions or only some of them? So a land use variance is required when you don't have the right zoning. So it could be required for all of them depending on the acreage. The truth is it depends. So we've talked about lot sizes, and ultimately that's just going to come down to what kind of buildings or product can I put on that piece of property. How to perform site prep from ground up construction, subdividing, clearing, subdividing, prepping. So we'll get further into that soon. And really what I mean is my 7.5 acres on part 1 of the video is fully wooded. So a lot of this took learning who's going to clear, how we're going to clear. Earlier when we talked about the team members and the site graders, etc., you're going to need someone to either come save some of the wood and you can most likely sell it or use it, or you're going to have to get rid of that wood. And there's a lot of heavy, cool equipment like Tonka toys that you can do while doing it. So when you're preparing for that site infrastructure, there's a process that you should become familiar with, and it's really clearing the site and getting it prepped. Some people clear everything and you just have a really flat product, and others decide which trees we're going to save, which trees are not going to save, what can I work around. One thing I'm learning is that, for me, a valuable subdivision has mature trees or mature green. So really, what can I save when I'm doing the site design prior to going in and chopping everything down with my buddies in a chainsaw? The other thing you'll learn along the way, and you'll learn this also with your civil engineer, is preparing for the site infrastructure, meaning connecting your utilities, connecting your storm drains, your sanitary, etc. And you're going to learn a lot of new words about, clean outs and laterals and easements, and all of these things are going to help you connect the dot. But, it's great YouTube resources that you can watch other videos and just typing in these kind of systems. You learn about civil engineering, where you're, getting your fire hydrants, etc. And I'm saying civil engineer and civil engineering, it's kind of interchangeable, which is ridiculous. So you hire your civil engineer to help you civil engineer your site. You'll learn about the drains, the piping, and all the requirements to get everything happening. We're going to end up trenching a main water. What does that main water pipe look like? That's what these pictures are. These are main water pipes. This diagram on the right is showing you the technical drawings that are going to be used to actually implement from raw land to now a technically sound subdivision. So, all of these things are going to be fairly regulated, and you'll have your officials to help you along the way. One thing I've learned is you're going to have to learn to love reading building plans. Building plans are going to really detail the zoning, the building structures, the inventory, everything you're going to need to get done, the scope of work. It's going to be the manual for the people on the ground to implement the plans that you're going to build. It's also going to, make you very familiar with the structural components and, how they're designed and how they're going to be implemented. Excuse me, I'm stuttering Stanley. So in addition, the building plans are going to give you your schedules and itemize the dimensions of your cabinets, of your floorings, etc. So everything is really technically, figured out to a T. Next, we'll just quickly touch on MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And I like to say the drains, veins, vents, and plugs. And really your electrician, your HVAC company, your plumber are going to follow the specs of these plans. And those are going to tell them where these drops and where these connections need to be made. And all of these systems will lay on top of the civil engineering infrastructure that's going to get you in the grid. So your plans are also going to determine your construction method once you get to the building process. I've highlighted here in these photos some different varying for residential construction building methods. This one on the left is a SIPS panel system. You can watch a YouTube video about that. The one on the right is cold form steel, a favor and what I'm looking to start building with for our subdivisions and homes. Next, you have SIPS panel, not SIPS panel, excuse me, ICF, insulated concrete forms. You can look up that, as well as on the right, we have masonry block, and you can have poured, or masonry block essentially. And the cost and the budget are also going to determine your construction method. So you'll work with your own preferences, you'll work with your architect to design the kind of structure that you want to bring to that market. And ultimately it depends on the product, the area, et cetera, that's going to influence these design choices. So let's talk about why inspiration is important for building a subdivision. And we like to mood board and really start planning early on. I really love design. So for us, it's a matter of looking at magazines. I know a lot of people spend time watching HGTV and they love the transformation process. So really it's just envisioning what you want to build and then trying to bring that to life with your team members, et cetera. But it's going to keep you excited. It's going to keep you energized in the project. You're going to know that, hey, after you go through this hard work and after you move mountains of dirt, essentially, at the end, here's what the final product's going to look like. And think about the effect it's going to have on people, on the community, and ultimately on you after you've been able to succeed. So it's a very exciting process. So how to conduct feasibility studies for a subdivision with open source information. And like most of you, I'm a big YouTuber. I like to spend a lot of time on YouTube. I like to try to read a lot of books. And then I also like to talk to a lot of people who are in the construction and building trades industry. I love to go to these home builder communities and take tours and talk to their open house people and just simply ask questions like a buyer would ask questions. Sometimes I act like I don't own a home and I let them just educate me on different methods and, and different things that are going on. And basically I use that to learn. Another thing I've done is I look at publicly traded companies and their home building filings, because, it's very impressive to see these companies that are building, hundreds of thousands of homes every year. So ultimately, I think that's a very, NVR, Ryan Homes is a good example of a ticker that I studied a lot of. And I think there's a lot of valuable information there. So there's plenty of open source information out there. You just have to be willing to kind of no stone unturned and really search for that information, because you're going to be learning, like I said, along the whole way. So when one-story houses make sense when building a subdivision. So for me, I'm interested in building ranches for the most part. And part of that reasoning is I have this bias to believe that not only will millennials love a ranch, but so will their boomer parents who don't want to walk up and down the stairs. I also believe from a construction standpoint, they're going to be easier to implement, but really the preference is up to you, your site, and what you have in mind for yourself. But personally, for me, for my preferences, I'm leaning towards ranch style housing, single story, and I know two of the demographics that I'm ultimately building for. So it's very important to understand the audience and who you want to live in that property as you're building it, or who, et cetera. So let's do another frequently asked question. Using amenities and incentives to attract residents to your subdivision project. So because I'm building the subdivision, I need to attract, let's say, 22 new residents to want to live in this community and either buy or rent a house from me. And once again, that's where you can drive around. That's where you can take tours of other successful subdivisions. That's where, you can really just think, what is going to increase the quality of life to attract someone to your project? We mentioned mature trees and keeping some mature trees there, entryways, things like that. The quality of life is going to be really important, the aesthetic. And that's where, once again, mood boarding could come into play, because it can give you a feel for that project. And then the engineering and the architecture is what's going to implement that built vision. So how to do market research for new construction subdivision, asking biz owners, social media, et cetera. So yeah, I think we've pretty much talked through that. I mean, market research is going to be pretty constant. You're going to always want to be reading, learning, and talking to people. You're going to want to befriend the brokers, the realtors, your team members. You're going to want to visit supply houses and understand the cost of the pricing of goods, both at big box retailers, online, etc. It's going to be a constant research, curiosity, and discovery mode. And you're going to endlessly be doing market research. Wow. So I guess that's the end of this video. I hope it was valuable. In the next video, I said I'm going to do a project catch up, so we'll organize some of my thoughts there. Thank you for watching, and make sure you subscribe to the channel.